One of the major things that we are often asked is how do we know how many carbohydrates are in what food? So today we're going to talk about how you measure your food and how you can verify how much carb you've eaten in a day. Hello, Wellness Warriors. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat. So just like you said, it's like very, very basic stuff, but it's something you need to do, I think, alongside your keto journey. So basically, two questions that came from you viewers. The first one was, are you literally measuring the food that you're eating? And the second one was, do you measure or record a gram of fat, protein, and carb? So we're gonna go through all like what you need to know to be able to measure properly your food to make sure that you have like the right amount of every macros.
So the first question was, are we actually, yes, we actually weigh the food we put on our plate. So by weighing it, you have you get an amount that you have, and then most food tracking apps give you the ability to verify how much carbohydrate was in the quantity of food that you tell it that you ate. So for example, if I eat 100 grams of rice, it will tell me how much carbohydrate was in that 100 grams of rice. The same way that if I eat 100 grams of pork, it's going to tell me how many carbohydrates were in that 100 grams of pork. So what I'm asking you guys to do is to check, to actually put it in the app.
And talking from experience, for sure, like after you've been doing keto for 6-8 months, like you know what your serving size should be or are, but still like your mind often play tricks on you, and you still need to be back to measuring once in a while because like your serving size are getting a little bit bigger, and you put a little bit too much of this, or like you often say, you take a bite of ice cream of your kid's dessert or something like that. So you need to track everything, and it's good once in a while along the journey to, if you for example, you seem to stall or you seem to gain weight, or like, and you're wondering what's happening, go back to basic and track.
Okay, let me add to what you just said. Because part one is I know my serving size, but yet if I take a serving spoon, so the serving spoon that you take, and I go like this in my container of whatever side dish it is, whether it's rice or whether it's vegetables or whatever it is, if I just take my spoon and do this and pick up a certain amount and plop it on my plate, I actually don't know how much I have there. So I might know I gave myself one spoon, but was that 100 grams today, or was that 150 grams today, or was that 75 grams today? And when you're talking about something as carb intensive as carrots, onions, potatoes, like those carb heavy vegetables, knowing how much is actually on the plate matters, because it's the difference between sometimes 10 grams of carb.
Yeah.
I'm actually suggesting that regardless of where you are in the process, you're checking your food regularly. Even if it's not every single day, it's regularly. Like people would be surprised to see that I still every single morning, even though I know how much fat to put in my I stand there with a teaspoon and a scale, and I measure it out. Because guess what? There's some days that what looks like is the amount on the spoon, but when I put it in, I have to go in there and take some out. It was too much. The other thing that I'm going to say that we need to think about is if I'm not actually inputting anything into my food calculator, what I also don't know is that little spoonful of ice cream that I took off my kid's ice cream cone was actually like 3 or 4 grams of carbs. Like there are some things that are just so intense in carb count that if I took a big enough spoonful, I just push myself over my day.
So let's go back to basics a little bit, like what you need, the tools you need. Like we already, I think, talked about that in our little introduction. So you need a scale. You need an app. They work good, like because like you said, you input a food and it's gonna break down into macro. After that, it's just a matter of like this is gonna become your best friend. Like at some point, you leave it on the counter and put everything you put in the plate like on a scale, measure it, and then after that, you put it in your app. So, but
And you put
yeah,
it in your app before you eat it.
yeah,
This is the part of the story that people get wrong. They eat it, So they log it and they write it down on something, but they don't actually double check how much grams of carb was that. So then you eat it, and then you're looking back after saying, well, I had this much and this much, and all of a sudden you realize, well, I just ate 40, 50 grams of carb. That's not helping you to accomplish the goal that you're saying you want to accomplish. And don't try to guesstimate what's on the plate. Actually weigh it.
The second thing, you still kind of need to know like your numbers. We know we need to limit our carbs to 20. That's like a given constant. But what about like the fat and the proteins? You still don't want to overdo them. So you need to have a baseline where to, like, it's not a goal to attain, but the line to not cross, like in terms of grams of fat and protein.
What I will say is that people need to put perspective and put the real important things first. The most important thing that you're going to start off doing is limiting your carb count to 20. What's interesting to me is that for every person who actually focuses on limiting their carb count to 20 and then eats the protein and the fat that came along with whatever that meal was, two things start to happen very swiftly. The first one being your fat, your ability to overeat fat is not very high when you're not eating carb. If you're eating carb, you can overeat fat forever. But if you actually are not eating carb, so if you're eating 20 grams of carb or less, all of a sudden that ability to overeat fat is not there. And now what happens in that scenario? If I eat, which is supposed to be the case, protein is a pivot. However much was healthy for me to eat before I started a ketogenic lifestyle is what's healthy for me to eat in a ketogenic lifestyle. So each of us would need to have an idea of what was a healthy amount of protein. For example, I'm an adult female. I eat about a chicken leg, a full leg, thigh, drumstick per meal, right? I'm an adult female. I eat about a 7-ish ounce, maybe 5 to 7, depending on what kind of meat it is, ounce piece of meat. And if I'm eating it and I'm full, I stop eating. Not full. If I'm eating it and I'm satiated, I stop eating. This is the other thing that we will learn to do, but we need to put our mind around that. That's what we're trying to learn to do, which is we're not eating to fullness. Can I just point out to everyone that tomorrow morning when you wake up, the kitchen's still there with all the food that you bought. You're not looking to stuff yourself today because I don't know when the next time I'm going to get food is going to be. You're actually looking to eat a healthy amount of food because so healthy means satiating amount of food, because you know tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to be able to eat again. Right? So when it comes to the macros, you're limiting your carb intake, and the fat and the protein, if we eat to satiation, tend to work themselves out. What I see here is that the second question says, do you measure or record the gram of fat, gram of protein, gram of carb? So, and I feel like the mistake that's happening here is that the person believes that we're asking to track the macros individually out of the food versus understanding that when you eat 100 grams, that's too much. If I eat 30 grams of nuts, the app is going to tell me how much carb, how much fat, and how much protein was in my 30 grams of nuts. And then the thing that you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to make sure that for my day, that my carb numbers, when I look at the total for my day, didn't go over 20. Is it possible that on any particular day I could see that, oh, my fat number was over, oh, my protein number was over that theoretical number that's in there? First of all, and I think you started to say this earlier, Pat, that we need to make sure that those theoretical numbers that are in this calculator make sense for your ideal weight at the end. Because that's important. But so flip that around. If on one day my fat went over, not a big deal. If every day my fat is going over, something is causing me to overeat my fat. Protein is interesting because if I'm eating very ultra low carb, I might end up eating a lot of protein, because if that's all I'm eating for the day, the time it will take me to feel satiated is going to be a little bit longer, and I will get more protein in. However, the thing that
But
we understand about protein is that if it's eaten in the absence of carbohydrate, again, the processes that are happening to the food is different.
okay, but what about like satiation? Would fat be more effective in feeling satiated if you do very very low carb? Like you said, you just might end up eating a little bit more protein, but like would someone be better eating a little bit more fat?
I'm always encouraging
So
people to eat the fat that comes along with whatever
okay,
protein source you're eating. If you add fat to it, you do open that door,
okay,
because how are you
okay,
adding the
so
fat? So a lot of the times we're adding the fat with some kind of coconut oil, avocado, like
mm,
you're adding some kind of oil, and it's easy to get down a tablespoon of that.
yeah,
Versus if it's on my meat, as I'm eating the meat, I'm eating the fat, and chances that I will be satiated at some point and stop
mm,
eating is very high. Now, this is part of the reason that when I'm eating a meal and there's carbs on the plate, I'm focused on eating
mm-hmm,
the meat and fat first, and I kind of use the carb on the plate as the, the little bit of fun that I'm spiking.
mm-hmm,
But it's like it's not my focus, because I think the other thing that we've, again, as I said a few seconds ago, eating carb helps you to get more fat and protein in.
mm,
So you don't want to be caught in that situation where you end up having so much fun in that carb you're eating. So again, it depends what you have on your plate. I mean, French fries will
mm,
do it to
yeah.
us. Rice will do it to us. Carrots and onions and like those things will do it to us because they're high in carb, and they're
Mm,
high enough in carb that they hit you.
yeah. Maybe the other hint I can give, if whenever you input your food in your app, make sure, because sometimes there's a big difference between cooked and raw. So if for example you weigh your meat raw, make sure in the app you get like the raw corresponding item, because like when you cook something that's fattier, you're gonna lose a lot of fat like in the pan. You might not ingest all that fat. For example, if you do like ground pork or ground beef, like some of the fat might stay in the pan, right?
Hmm.
So
Although the interesting thing there is that I always do all of my meats
mm,
raw, and the reason is, interestingly, is that I'm eating to satiation. And so I'm not tracking that fat number. I'm more tracking that carb
yeah,
number. And I feel like, like when we start getting into the weeds and that kind of thing, and then I'm not listening to my body and seeing that if I'm satiated, I'm satiated. Stop trying to hit a number,
mhm.
right? I will have food tomorrow.
I see a lot of comments that people are doing keto or doing one meal a day, but they seem to feel hungry all the time. Like anyway, is it like because they don't have enough fat in their diet, maybe, or
So
like
if you're eating lean cuts of meat, yeah,
oh yeah, yeah, sure,
yeah, I
mm,
do feel like sometimes people are doing a ketogenic lifestyle. And so, as much as I'm saying, let the fat on your meat be what it is,
it has to
if
be
I'm
fat.
choosing the lean
Yeah.
cuts of meat always, then there isn't any fat to fuel my. So
Mm,
this is where, like, we need to be realistic in what we're trying to accomplish, and where what you said earlier kind of touches it is
mm,
that if I have a tracker and my tracker is still focused on standard American diet ways of losing weight, even though I'm telling it 20 grams of carb, it's going to be downgrading my protein and my fat as well, which is part of the reason that I don't encourage people to pay attention to those two numbers. It's going to tell me I need a ridiculously small amount of protein and a ridiculously small amount of fat.
mm,
So, and that's where you get into people
mm,
where, in your situation that you're talking about now, where you're saying, well, I'm eating keto and everything, but I'm hungry all the time. If
mm.
you're eating a healthy ketogenic diet and feeling hungry, something is off.
Yeah,
Right, and most likely what's off is that you're still going for lean cuts of meat.
yeah, yeah. What about somebody that, for example, don't like the chicken legs but prefer chicken breast? This might be where it becomes handy to add a little bit more fat to the diet. For example, focused on the dressing, like add a little bit more salad dressing, and we're not talking obviously in low fat salad dressing. You go for the full fat ones, but like again, like you have to check your labels and like pick the stuff that has like zero carbs or very very little carbs, but like yeah, so maybe add fats in that, because when we're like for those of you who know us, like we're against like wrapping everything in bacon and frying everything. Like we want you to do a healthy keto lifestyle. So that's why we always like suggest to eat the fat like that comes with your meat, but there has to be fat there.
And so, like, for someone who is doing mostly chicken breast, mostly, so then how, like, if you're eating a straight chicken breast, like I've cooked it, and so if you, how are you preparing it? If you're doing that on the barbecue, for example, then yeah, there's a chance you're gonna have to add fat to this
Mm,
meal. But does that now mean that I have to wrap it in bacon, like you said? No.
mm,
Like, I mean, I could put butter on it. I could put olive oil on it.
mm,
But the thing for you to understand is when you input into your calculator and you see, okay, the carb count is at the right number, and I've eaten enough in this moment to feel satiated, and yet in a very short period of time I'm feeling hungry. There wasn't enough energy in that meal for you. And this is about energy. So where am I going to get my energy from at that point? Am I adding carbs? Never.
mm,
Don't add carbs. Look at your meal. And now you need to be investigatory. You need to check, did I have enough fat in that meal to carry me forward? One of the things that we need to be careful about is that there's two sides of this. If I eat enough fat to fuel my entire day, my body has no reason to pull some from me. If I eat so little fat that I can barely fuel my day, my body's going to tell me that you're hungry, Val, you didn't eat enough. So you're trying to find that in between ground where I'm eating enough fat,
mhm.
but that my body's still going to be like, okay, I'm going to check in. And do. So here's a question for those people, because now I just thought of something else. What are you doing when you feel hungry? Because maybe that's really the problem. Because the truth of the matter is, at the very beginning of the process, especially, if I eat and I feel hungry and then I have a snack, how much carb was in that snack?
Or in that meal, for example, if you feel hungry right after, maybe it is
No,
that
I'm
you had too
talking
much.
no, no, I'm
Or-
talking about if I have a meal
mm,
and then I feel hungry before my next meal, chances are very good I might actually have a snack.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
how much carb was in that snack? One of the things that we're not thinking
Mm,
about is the insulin spikes that happen whenever
mm,
you eat, and those insulin spikes determine how often you are going to feel hungry
mm,
and what's happening to the food that you're eating. So if I feel hungry between meals, but the thing I decide to eat is 2 or 3 or 4 grams of carbs, I
mm,
how much protein could possibly in if it's a snack?
mhm.
So now all of a sudden there's an imbalance that I have more carb than protein and fat. And what's going to happen
Yeah.
is that my body is going to be now on a chasing carb cycle because the ratio of this stuff wasn't right. So, and I don't like talking about ratios very often
Mm,
of fat to carb to protein, but that 5% thing that they talk about, where it's like you really do need the carb coming in to be much less than the fat that you're eating. So
yeah.
if my snack is more, so if it's reaching like 50%, if it's reaching like 40%, like it's not at 5% anymore, and my
Yeah.
body's gonna act like I just had a normal meal,
Mhm.
and my insulin's gonna spike, and all the things start happening.
Yeah.
So there, that could be part of the reason that you're having people that are saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm hungry on keto," because in between they're eating keto treats and keto snacks and keto,
Mm.
and the ratio is not right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Especially like in those apps that works with percentages. Be careful because if you, for example, you're used to or you base your calculation on a 3,000 calories diet and you put 5% carb, it's automatically going to be over 20 grams. Like, so you better like try to set your grams of carb to a fixed number. Don't go over 20 and then work around like the other two macros.
And it's like that's
Uh,
a tricky thing, right? Because if
yeah.
if my snack, let's say, whatever the snack is that I'm taking, is falling well, like maybe it's only 2 grams of carb.
Hmm.
It could be, but it's 2 grams of fat.
Yeah.
I've just now done standard American diet there, even though, no, but
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
even
totally.
though it's 2 grams
Mhm.
of carb, it's 2 grams of fat.
Mm.
It's an equal, and my body's going to react to that.
Mhm.
So we need to be careful. That's actually, I didn't even thought about that, but that's a very important point, and we need to be
Yeah.
careful because it could definitely explain why you feel hungry if your snacks are not in line with what they
Yeah.
need to be in line with.
Good thing I want to say it's not because it's whole food that it need not to be tracked. Like you said, onions, For example, if you dine out and you order a Greek salad that has onions, track it, because like those onions are carby, those carrots are carby, those potatoes, even if they're sweet potatoes, are like relatively carby. So you need to track everything. And that brings me to the sneaky carb situation where like they sneak like everywhere. So whether it's from vegetables, or the two French fries you ate because you baked that for your kids, or you were like you're at a restaurant, they do matter. They do matter. So they if you want to have them, track them and make sure they fit in your numbers. Although they're gonna have a negative effect on your body, that's for sure.
That's the important thing too, is that understanding that this is not simply about losing weight. Everything that I eat becomes the building block of me.
Mhm.
And so even if it's one day out of the year that Violet has a huge influx of carbs, on that one day my body is like, oh my goodness, like trying to manage like
Mhm.
all this sugar that just came in. And even though it might not, like I might go right back to tomorrow and be good on track, you have to think about it. Would any of you that owns a home allow someone to just fill your house up with water just for one day, and then you're back
Mhm.
to no, the mold that's going to create the floors that are going to warp, the electrical that's going to get destroyed, like
Mhm.
all the things that are going to go wrong because in that one moment you did that one thing. We have to think about it.
Mhm.
We do this to our body on a very regular basis, and our body's constantly trying to counter what we're doing.
Mhm.
And then we wonder why we're not able to reach our weight loss goals. Your body is going to protect your health more than worry about how much you weigh. That is so important for us all to understand. So, Violet, 500 pounds and alive, to her body means more
Mhm.
than Violet, 100 pounds and she passes. It's going to go for the 500 pounds.
And why is it important to get back to measure once in a while? I've lived it. I do like full fat yogurt that only has 5 grams of carb per 175 grams, I think, serving. But when you get back to measure, you realize that, oh, okay, that serving that I thought was 175 is actually 225 to 50 grams of yogurt. So the 5 grams you thought you were having on your 20 is now like became 8 or 9. So that's why, like, yeah, it's good. Even though you're comfortable now with your diet, same goes with nuts. I think you can justify that. Like, yeah, especially the cashews, your 8 grams or 7 grams of carbs for cashews for 28 grams. 28 grams, not a lot. So you can easily like double or triple the serving size, and be fine with it because they taste good, they taste sweet, and so yeah, you need to get like put a nice space on your counter for your scale, have it there, and put everything you ingest on that scale to make sure that you don't go above and you track it properly.
And can I also point out that tracking your food keeps you in touch with what you're actually doing? It's so easy for us to pretend that I ate properly today, but when I actually think back over my day, yeah, I stole this from my daughter, I stole that from my son,
Mm.
right? It's so easy for us to pretend that we're doing the right thing, but I didn't actually even check if I was on 20 grams or less today. And if we pretend with ourselves enough times, we end up hurting ourselves, right? The truth is that by tracking everything, I'm keeping myself in check because I'm seeing the numbers. Those numbers are real.
Mm.
And now I have to decide, after I've logged it, am I actually eating all that or am I taking some off my
Mm.
plate? Right? And I think that when you have health in mind and understand and see the variation, I think it's the other piece of the puzzle. Like, we
Mm.
have both lived scenarios where by letting something slide, we saw the repercussions
Mm.
in how we felt. We saw the repercussions in, like, you had the high blood pressure come
Mhm.
back. Like, I've had stomach issues. When you let something slide and you see that, oh my goodness, not even one day can I do it because I see the repercussion, it starts to make it very real. Had I not been tracking, I wouldn't have made the link that, geez, I was over yesterday and
Mm.
now look at how my stomach is, right? I'm not feeling great. And that's important because the other thing we know, we're so good at giving ourselves excuses as to why things are not working that don't touch our actual actions.
Mm.
What did you eat yesterday, Violet? No, it's because this is because you overcooked it. It's because every reason. It's because I fell down. That's why my hip is hurting me. No,
Mm.
no, no, no. It's because you didn't eat properly. And sometimes we need to be able to go back and check and say, oh, it's true. It's 3 days I've been over. Look, it's there.
Is not tracking anything becomes a possibility in our lifestyle? Like, for example, if you don't allow yourself any nuts, what, like, for example, if you create your diet and you know what you're allowed to eat that has only let's say 0 or 0.5 grams of carb. I'm talking about meat, I'm talking about cheese, even olives. I think there's some carbs there, so you need to be careful. But let's say you allow yourself to eat only the things that have zero-ish carbs.
Honestly, I will say, of course.
Hmm.
First of all, I can't tell you guys what to do. Wellness Warriors, I want you to do what's right,
Hmm.
but I can't force you to do anything. But I'm going to also go this extra step and say, of course, because if in my day all I've eaten was meat, then I'm stopping at satiation, and there was no carbs there for me to. There was no carbs there.
Mm-hmm.
If in my day all I've eaten was meat and, let's say, salad, and I know that this bowl cannot hold the amount of salad that I would be able to put in it to reach 20 grams. So, like, let's say I'm not using the big bowl today. I'm using one of my smaller bowls, because my big bowl can hold it, but my smaller bowl cannot. Then I know I didn't reach it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't have to. If that's all I'm eating today, I don't have to track. The question is that really all I'm going to eat today?
Yeah.
So if I know, like, for example, if you're Violet and you do one meal a day, and as you're loading your plate, there's nothing carby on it, there's no reason for you to track, except for, might I eat something else later?
Yeah.
And if there's something else that I might eat, again, if I'm doing that, then I really have to put it in my mind that today I am not allowed to have any carbs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm not going to know.
Okay. And like that brings me to the idea of carb tracking versus complete tracking, like food tracking. Would it be a good idea to track only the carbs to 20? Just like you eat to satiation, you're comfortable what you eat, you don't feel hungry, then like is it a good idea to just track the carbs?
I have only ever just tracked the carbs.
Okay.
At the end of the day, though, in my tracking the carbs, are the other things being tracked? Of course, because I'm putting the food in, right? The food calculator calculates the macros, period.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, though, is that I don't pay any attention to the fat or protein because I know that I'm going to eat the right amount of protein. So it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 7 5 and 7 ounces of protein, and it's going to be, well, the fat that comes along with it. I don't. Besides my coffee, I don't add extra fat. Although I fry things, so that's, I guess, technically adding extra fat. So theoretically, yes, but I don't go out of my way in my meal to eat extra fat. I don't buy anything that's low fat.
Okay.
So, right? So if I'm having a salad, believe it or there's fat in there. Right? So this is I think what, if I'm answering your question well, it's what's the important thing that we're trying to not poison ourselves with? It's the sugar. And I feel like all the people that are so focused on the other two macros is because you're worried about weight. And I'm trying to help everyone to understand that if I stop poisoning my body and unnecessary inflammation is no longer there and I'm healthier, my body regulates its weight because it's not storing away extra sugar, because it's not fighting with me about what's coming in, and it can go in and do all the cleanup and do all the positives, and the inflammation goes away, and and my weight regulates. There's some videos on the screen right here that are going to help you to improve your health, to support the channel and help us to stay independent. There's some links in the description below.
If you like the video, please like and subscribe.
I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Wellness Warriors, always happy that you guys come back. Everybody who's new, welcome.
See you next week.
See you next week.